Today we're going to make German style apple turnovers, and for that we need puff pastry, powdered sugar, lemon juice, sliced apples, and I sprinkled a little bit of sugar on top. We need flour to sprinkle on our surface. We need parchment paper, rolling pin, and a knife. So let's get started. Here I have 2 puff pastry pieces that I laid out to defrost for about 1 hour. And I put them on the parchment paper so that they don't stick to the surface. I'm going to preheat the oven to 400 degrees. Sprinkle the working surface with a little bit of flour so that the puff pastry dough doesn't stick. And then we're going to unroll it and remove any lining that we have here. Now the puff pastry is a little bit thick, so we're going to slightly roll it out, not too much. We don't want it to be too thin either, so just slightly roll it. And then cut it in half. So that you have 2 slices of 2 parts of the puff pastry. And we're going to mix the apples with the sugar. Just make sure that everything is covered. I'm using sour apples. That's why I'm using a little bit of sugar, but if your apples are sweet enough, then you don't even need to use any sugar in it, because we're going to sprinkle some powdered sugar lemon glaze on top of them when they're baked, so they will be sweet enough. But like I said, because they were sour apples, I'm adding some sugar to it. So now we're going to line them up, because as many of them as possible, as many of the slices as possible, so they're nice and fruity on the inside. And we're going to take that one part of it and put it on top of it and seal it nicely so that no juices come out of the cup over. And you can use egg wash if you'd like to seal it, but I don't think it's that necessary, so I'm going to just go without it. And then you seal it one more time, just to make sure that nothing comes out of it. We want them to keep as juicy and as delicious as possible on the inside. So just seal it one more time. You can use a fork for that, for the second part, to seal it. I'm just going to use my fingers. So one of it is done. And we're going to the second one. I'm doing the same, just seal the edges nicely. Like that. And these puff pastries, or the popovers, are going to be somewhat large, so you can cut them in half once they're done. And you can serve them as whole or as halves, depending on how much you want to serve. And we're going to use the other puff pastry dough that we have. I had 2 pieces in the package that I bought, so I'm going to use 2. And that makes 4 total, the puff pastry. You can cut the dough in more pieces. We can cut them in 4. I like it in 2 because then I don't have to cut my apples smaller than they are right now, and it makes it quicker, and I think that the flavor of the apples just stays more intact. And I didn't use any spices. I didn't use any cinnamon or nutmeg in it. This was the original recipe without any spices, so that's what I'm using here. I don't think that they necessarily need any spices, but if you like cinnamon in it or nutmeg, you can add either of them or both. It's just what your preference is. Whenever I was in Germany, I usually went to the bakeries, and almost every bakery had the apple popovers, and they were just absolutely delicious, and they didn't use any additional spices or any spices at all. So this is how I like them. So again, we're going to seal these. If your fingers stick to the dough, you can just use a little bit of flour in your fingers so that it's easier to seal it. There we go. Off to the last piece. They're going to be absolutely divine, I promise you. I think this is a good quick alternative to an apple pie because it doesn't need to bake quite as long. Plus, it's easier to take it with you to work, or maybe even give it to your kids for lunch. So now we're going to put them in the oven, in the middle rack, and we're going to set the timer to 25 minutes. And they're done. So we're going to use our powdered sugar and lemon juice. I'm going to mix it all together, and if you don't want to for the icing to be too sour, then you can add a little bit of water. And just a tablespoon or so. You can gradually add it so that the consistency is like this. Not too runny, but also not too thick. And you need to make sure that the turnovers are not too hot. So after you take them out of the oven, just let them sit for about 15 minutes. And you can use as little or as much of the sugar icing as you like. I'm not going to spare any since I didn't use much sugar for the mixture. And you could serve these as dessert or breakfast or a snack throughout the day. They're just absolutely divine. They're quite large, so you can cut them in half. Last piece. And we are done. So this is it. Hope you enjoy.